All right, so now we're going to move on to visualizing continuous data. So we have the slides here. We're going to download the data set. You can also find the source. I'll list with the data sets here. This is just from Kaggle, which is a sort of a data science website with lots of data sets and even competitions. All right, so let's download this data. It shows up in our downloads folder. Now, I also have the part one folder in a Finder window right here. So I'm just going to drag this over and let's see, drag this over here. And then we have our new data set. Now you can already start to see that this is getting a little full. We have the files from the previous Excel example. If we don't put sort of a script, like a part label on the front, this might get a little cluttered eventually. So what I'm going to do is put part one, and then this is the second Excel exercise in part one. So I'm going to put part one underscore two. We just use underscores. Sometimes, at least in the old days, computers just were not very good at reading spaces for some reason. So this is now just partly convention. So I'm going to enter. The other thing is you can see the bar chart and the pie chart we made in the last one, just floating. But what I want to do is actually separate out the data files from the images. So I'm going to create a new folder. So the class exercise folder, we have the part folder, and now we have a figures folder within the part one folder. So I'm just going to move these two images, these two figures, into the figures folder. And that just keeps it sort of organized. We have all of our data outside and then all of our figures on the inside. All right, so I'm going to double click on this and bring up Excel. Let's just not convert. All right. So we're bringing up this file that represents, it's like a real data file from Starbucks of customer profiles. So we have IDs, we have gender, we have age, we have this date they became a member, we have something about their income, which is interesting. But again, before we get into working with this stuff, we have this possible data loss warning from Excel. So we're just going to save this as a Excel workbook. Just hit save. We want to make sure that it's going in the part one folder, not somewhere else. Okay. And then if you go back to the Finder window, you can see that we've just created where we had opened the Starbucks customer files as a CSV. Excel just created a copy for us in the Excel format. Okay, very nice. Now, we want to know something about the distribution of ages. So like, you just look at this column and like, there's so much going on here, it's hard to know what ages are represented here. So we want to know generally what age are Starbucks customers. So we just click on the column here, just click on C, just hover above it and then click. And then this one's very simple. All we do is go to Insert, go over here to Statistical, which looks a lot like a bar chart, but it's actually a histogram. So it's going to actually create what we call bins. And we'll come back to this in a little bit. So it's slightly different than a bar chart, which is using categories. So we'll click on this histogram, and that plots this nice little thing for us. Let's zoom in. All right, so we have our histogram. Okay, so this is telling us on the horizontal axis, we have all the different bins, which looks kind of complicated as it's set up. And then it's on the vertical axis, it's counting how many times one of the ages falls into that bin. So for example, this first one is showing us it's saying 18, comma 20.5. So this is saying between the ages of 18, so it's including 18, it's a closed bracket, and 20.5. How many times do those ages show up in this column? And it's telling us it's like roughly 375. And then we can just go through each one of these bins is counting this age variable, which is a continuous variable, but it's sort of grouping them based on what we call a bin. It's like a range of the continuous variable. Okay, so what we're going to do, this is pretty messy. So what we're going to do, the first thing I like to do, maybe a little controversial, is I like to just remove all the parts of the plot that are not necessary. So I just sort of click around a little bit to highlight these lines, just remove them. If you like them, leave them in. But personally, I like to pull them out. Okay, and then the next thing to do is to double click on the bars themselves. So if you want to get out of this, you can hit exit or just click somewhere else. And then you just go back, hover over the thing, and then double click on it. That brings up format data series. And it gives us a couple of options. So for bins, it's telling us by default, it's selecting auto bin size. So it's just picking some bins based on what the computer might think is reasonable. But we're not sort of happy with leaving the bin sizes. You can see there's a lot of it's a lot going on here. So I want to go in, click on the category, and click on bin width. So this will allow us to specify how wide we want these bins to be. We're going to start by setting the bin width at 5. Now, because the values here are in terms of years, we're saying we're going to bin all of these ages into 5-year increments. And then we'll just hit enter, and we'll sort of see the thing adjust. Okay, so the other thing we maybe should have done earlier is we can relabel this. So we could call this Starbucks customer ages. Okay, and you'll notice on the horizontal axis here, things got a little simpler. It's maybe a little bit easier to read. There are fewer bins, so that may be part of it. But we can also see that the ranges are don't involve decimals, which is nice. So this first bin is telling us between 18 and 23 inclusive. So we're including 23-year-olds in this first bin because of the square bracket on the end. There's roughly 750. And then the second one, slightly less. We have 708, so you can hover over it and see the count. So it's saying not including 23, but 24 to 28, that has a count of 708. Okay, so this is better. In fact, we've even smoothed things out now that we've increased the bin size. But let's make this even a little nicer. So you can see, it would be nice if we could break this into, we're binning on 5 years, so we could even specify, it'd be nice to specify that it starts at 20, for example, which would then break the decade in half exactly. So what I'm going to do, we have 2 other options here. We have an underflow bin and an overflow bin. We're going to start with the underflow bin, and I'm going to put in 15. Okay, that didn't work for some reason. Okay, so I just put in 20, and what that did is it counts 20 and below as its own bin. Now, because this is the first one, it then updates all of the others to count the decades, or half decades. So we've changed the underflow bin we have a bin that starts, it counts everything up to 20, and then the next one starts at 20 and then goes up. So we have this open brackets. We're saying 21 to 25-year-olds fall into this bin, and then 25 to 30 falls into this bin, which is nice. But you could also, I feel like 19 would be more natural. Do it this way, then we're saying we start at 20. This is 19, not inclusive. So the next age above 19 is 20. So we're starting at 20. It's just sort of a funny way Excel writes this. So 20 to 24. 20, this is saying 25 actually, because we're not including 24. So 25 to 29. And then it goes all the way up. So this, I would say, is probably the nicest way of presenting this data. You could play around with the bin widths if you like, but I think 5 is okay. And given our data, if we go any lower, then we might get noise, like we talked about in class. Okay, so one thing we can do is actually save this figure. So I'm going to right-click up on the upper corner, drop down to save as picture, and it'll bring up the folder that this file is sitting in. We want it to go into the figures folder. So let's save this as part 1, 2, and we'll just give it some extra information. So this is like a histogram. That'd be nice. Yes, I just spelled histogram. Never 100% sure. All right, click save, and then it should get saved properly. Now I'm going to go check the spelling of histogram. Histogram. Yeah, we can. Okay, so this is visualizing continuous data. The main tool here is with histograms. All right.